Is she gonna say something? I don't know if my sound is working or what. I was having technical difficulties, so I was hoping somebody would tell me if my sound is working on the live. So if you're here and you can put a 1 in the comment if you can hear me, that would be amazing. And I'm gonna grab something real quick and see if anyone lets me know. That would be awesome. Okay, hello. I've got something to drink, so I'm just gonna go for it. If you can hear me, please drop a 1 in the chat. I was having some technical difficulties and it would be sad for me to do this and nobody could hear me. But then again, I'm used to talking to myself, so that's okay if that happens. But if you can let me know. Okay, you can hear me. Good. Thank you. Welcome, Narcissist Slayer. It's a great name, by the way. Narcissist Slayer. So what are we talking about today? I haven't been on in a while. If you guys keep up with my channel, I was doing videos every day and then doing some lives and shorts and all the things. And I haven't been on for a few days because I had my dad's funeral to attend. And it's been quite an emotional time for my family and also the world, right? Well, at least in the United States, there's been a lot going on. I think if you have your eyes open and you're in the world, you've been noticing some cray-crayness, right? So today what we're talking about is to shift consciousness, we have to fall into grace. You cannot shift it from your mind. So much about what I teach and what I live, it doesn't come from the mind. Even me wanting to do this live today, I was starting to get in the mind. That is where the darkness will control you. That is where the mind control will control you. That is where the demons, the narcissists, the gaslighting from other people and yourself will infiltrate you if you are not conscious to it. So we have to be really careful. The mind is great. It's great for critical thinking. It's great to assess that the building is not on fire and that you're safe and all those things, how to drive a car. You know what I mean? Like, obviously you need your mind to do things, but the mind gets us in trouble when you let the mind run the show and you don't allow yourself grace, because then you can stop listening. I think a major problem right now, especially in the United States, is a lack of listening, a lack of empathy. Not only did my dad die a few months ago and I had a funeral to attend, but I've been really disheartened by people, by Americans. I've been so disheartened by a lot of my friends, so-called friends. I'm seeing them on Facebook saying the most asinine things, the most hateful things. You guys, I believe that the people who come to this channel, I believe that you guys have emotional intelligence. I believe that you guys have empathy. Yes, of course, the narcissists and the trolls like to show up and make fun of me. I don't care because that is just par for the course, right? But who I'm really speaking to are the people who really want to make a shift in consciousness, who really want to make an impact on the planet in a positive way, who don't want to just go to the lowbrow, like, you know, name calling, you're this, you're that. And the narcissist will say, well, you're calling people narcissists. Oh my God, it's mind bending if you allow it to go through the mind. So you've got to just allow yourself to fall into grace. How do we do that? How in the world do we fall into grace? The entry point is through listening. The entry point is to actually listen, especially when you disagree. We cannot only have conversations with people who agree with us. The conspiracy theories that are running the show right now, the disheartened people. I mean, I saw school teachers in Colorado, public school system, right, which many people could argue is broken anyhow. public schools, schools in general, but a good teacher is a good teacher anywhere, whether they're in a public school or private school. A bad teacher is a bad teacher anywhere. But I was devastated when I read some of these teachers saying, I'm sorry, the shooter missed. What? You guys, if you're talking like that, there's a real problem. There is a real problem. This is not okay. Everybody should be concerned. This is not Democrats and Republicans, but the mind will want to trick you to think that way. The mind is going to want to trick you to think it's us against them. I don't care. I'm going to make blanket statements. The mind goes to blanket statements. All Republicans are like this. All Democrats are like this. Do you realize that you're talking about some of your friends, your neighbors, your teachers, your spouse, your whoever? Like, did you forget humanity? Did you forget about heart? So I was devastated to see some of these comments by people. Like, where is your humanity? Where? I mean, it's just absolutely horrible. Yeah, let the trolls play their game. Hello, good morning, afternoon. How's your day been? Yeah, yes, I'm doing good, but I've been really sad. I'll be honest, I've been really sad, and I didn't even know exactly how to approach this, because for my whole life, I have really tried hard from a heart-centered place to be that person that's in the middle ground. Not wishy-washy, not like I don't have a stance, not like I don't have an opinion, but from a middle ground of peace, to try to listen to both sides of an argument. But nowadays, that's not even allowed, it feels like. Nowadays, if you don't go into the sensationalism of it, pick a side, do this, do that, it's like, oh my gosh, it is so horrifying. I witnessed it from a young age, right? Because my dad came from very humble beginnings, very. I mean, I joke, I'm like, seriously, people say, oh, white privilege. I think I missed my chance on the white privilege. I want to know where it is. Like, give me some, because I missed it. I didn't get it. My dad slept on newspaper most of his life. Him and his siblings, they didn't even realize they were poor because they just learned good work ethic, but they were extremely poor, extremely poor. My dad grew up with nothing. And then he taught himself. He read books. He learned about things. He learned how to become the #1 salesman for, what is it called? Guaranteed Mutual. And then he built up businesses. He ran for Congress. He did so many things, just pulling himself up from the bootstraps, right? And like creating that for himself. And so many times in my life, we would have like what people would consider riches. And then many times in my life, we would have nothing. It was like feast or famine. But what that taught me is how to be with people who had a lot of money, and it taught me how to be with people who had no money, because at many times we were living in both ways at the exact same moment. So the rich kids, I wouldn't fit in with them because I wasn't taking trips around the world, and they didn't understand why I didn't have money to afford tennis shoes for volleyball or whatever, all the things, right? Like we couldn't afford milk at times. So the rich kids didn't understand that. But then the poor kids sometimes didn't understand me either because I was, I had a horse, or we belonged to a country club. So my dad like taught me how these dichotomies can exist at the same time. And the reason why he would provide these things for me, like a country club, he really worked hard at getting into one of the best country clubs in the United States, Cherry Hills Country Club. He worked hard to get into that club because he always said, if you want to fly, you hang around the hangar. You got to hang around people who are creating things and building things and doing things. But not everyone's going to understand that, right? So sometimes the poor people would be like, oh, you're so wealthy. And then the wealthy people would go, you're so poor. So I didn't really belong anywhere, right? Which is very confusing as a kid. But now I understand more what he was trying to create for us and what he was trying to give to us. But with that, I was ridiculed. I was made fun of by lots of different people everywhere. I went into a private school because he saw all the drugs and all the things that were going on, a lot of gang violence in the public school system in Colorado, which I went for public school all through my elementary school and then also in high school. But in middle school, he was trying to preserve my innocence. So I went into a private middle school. And some of these elite kids there would make fun of me. Like, they would say that I couldn't afford things and make fun of me because we were putting all of our money just to go to this school. Well, they couldn't understand that because they were taking trips around the world and they had all the fanciest clothes. We didn't. My dad put all the money into my education because he was trying to give that opportunity to me. So I remember, and this I promise is going to have a point into the state of affairs of things. But I remember specifically in 6th grade, a social science teacher had asked the entire class a question, right? And the question was this: would you rather teach a man to fish or give a man a fish, right? You guys have probably heard this debate. Let me know if you've heard this debate, right? Teach a man to fish or give a man a fish. And I was like, all innocent and raised my hand. I said, well, teach a man to fish, right? Because then he can get more fish, because that's how my dad taught us. Like, learn how to build something so that you don't have to be dependent on somebody else, so that you can sustain yourself. He said, if you learn how to pay for things on your own, you can feed yourself. And that's very powerful. That's all I knew. So I was like, yeah, teach a man to fish so then he can get more fish. And everyone was like, oh, that's terrible. Why? Why would you do that? And I was like, why wouldn't you? Why is that so bad? And I turned to my friend and I said, why is everyone like, why am I the bad person for thinking that? And she said, oh, it's because your parents are Republican, and so they don't care about people. And I was like, huh? What? I had never even heard Republican or Democrat, because a lot of the people at the school were elitist Democrats. I didn't know that. I had no clue. I was like, what? They're who? They're Republican? They don't care about people? So I came home from school. Meanwhile, my mom was the true story. I mean, I'm speaking the truth here. I can only speak my experience. My mom was volunteering at the 5 Points Community Center. So when she got home, 5 Points is an area that was definitely underserved. It still exists in Denver. It's a very gentrified now, and there's a lot of poverty there. Well, she would volunteer at the community center there. Both my parents, they did a lot of generous community work and charity work and all that stuff. So when she came home, I was like, what, we're Republican and we don't care about people? Explain to me. And she was like, I got to explain you something. So anyway, I never liked politics because of that. Because I was like, what? Why are you labeled something if you want to teach somebody how to? I didn't get it. So my whole life I was independent. I just looked at policies. I still think a wonderful thing would be if we didn't even know the candidates. If you didn't even know party lines, wouldn't it be amazing if you didn't even know and you had to vote all policy. You had to read and research and just vote on the policies that you believed in and then see what you ended up voting for. Because so much of it is smoke and mirrors. And whenever people go, oh, so-and-so lies or so-and-so lies, all politicians lie. Hello? The biggest lie is that you think politicians don't lie. I don't know one politician who doesn't lie. Politics is filthy. It's a horrible thing, but it's a system that we have to operate under. In the United States, this is our system, so we got to work with it. But this idea that you're not even allowed to have an opinion, you're not even allowed to try to teach somebody how to fish, otherwise you're a bad person, that I don't understand, and I never will. I mean, it's been so hard on me. So it's just crazy. So I've been so disheartened. So I've seen this stuff. I also saw what my dad ran for Congress, and I saw how terrible people were to him. They were awful, made up lies about him and tried to ruin us, absolutely destroy us as a family. And I was only 2 years old at the time, but my mom told me what happened. He got the opposing candidate, Pat Schroeder, he audited, or she audited him going back 7 years. She had the IRS turn on him. And so he was stuck in this big, massive audit and couldn't focus on what was going on. And so it was very, very disheartening. And they ended up finding like he overpaid the IRS, or the IRS, he owed the IRS or something, but it was $200. $200. That was it. But it caught him up in this whole audit, and that's very time consuming, and then nearly destroyed my dad. That campaign really destroyed my dad. That's when he turned to alcoholism and just completely, and that was his choice and his own path. But I saw from a young age how politics can just crush you, absolutely crush you. So when I see dear friends on Facebook and stuff saying, all people are like this, or all people, and I don't care what side you're on. I really don't. I don't care if you're a Republican, if you're a Democrat. If you're saying all people are this one way, then you have been brainwashed. That is a brainwashing. All white people can't be one single way. All Republicans can't be one way. All Democrats can't be one way. It's so asinine. So if you catch yourself thinking that, you got to check yourself and fall into grace. So yesterday I was teaching a class, and for those of you that don't know, I'm an acting teacher, but I'm also a personal development coach. And I enter the personal development through reading behavior, right? So when you're looking at reading behavior, it doesn't matter what you believe in. It's your behavior that speaks volumes. It doesn't matter what you say, it's how you say it. So we have to start looking at people for the content of their character, not their skin color, not how much money they have in the bank. It's so ridiculous. So I was in class and I was talking I have all different types of people in my classes, and anybody who's ever studied with me can attest to that. And I don't try for it. It just happens. I have people who I disagree with, who disagree with me, and it's all good because we're studying what it is to be human. And if we can't have conversations with people who have opposing viewpoints, then we're really in trouble. Then we might as well be in a full blast dictatorship, right? Freedom of speech is so important. But maybe you even edit yourself out of the picture. I know I have at times, because I don't want to be labeled something that I'm not. But I'm labeled things that I'm not anyway. So it's like I might as well speak my heart. So I was talking to my class. We all have different viewpoints, and I love it. I love it. I have people, I believe in God. I've had people in my classes who are Satan worshipers. I don't believe in that. Do I welcome them into my class? Yes, because we can have conversations and study humanity and learn stuff. Do I have to agree with everything that they say? No. Do they have to agree with everything I say? No. If we stop having conversations with people who are different than us, we are so in trouble. And I think art is a really good place to be able to look at humanity and to reflect it back in a positive way. If we can't do that, then I don't know what we're doing anymore. I don't know what we're doing anymore. Then you might as well just be totally controlled. And for the longest time, I've tried, and I still continue to try, to be that person that is the peacemaker, that is like bringing people together. But nowadays it's like, no, I've seen friends attack my mom on Facebook, and my stepdad, who's like a 86-year-old cowboy. I mean, it's like, really? Where's your respect? What has happened? So I was talking to my class, and I was talking to one guy who's been with me for years and years, and he's awesome. And he was like, I talk to people all the time who have differing viewpoints, and we talk like grown-ups, like adults, and we get along cool, and we totally disagree. And he said a lot of it is because of the work that I teach, the Miser technique. And I said, thank you. I love that you say that, but I also recognize that you've been a human on the planet since before you studied with me. So where does this come from? And he said, really, it's listening. And he said, the work I teach, the Miser technique, is big on that. It's listening without jumping in and wanting to be right all the time. Actually falling into grace. Grace is what is going to shift our consciousness, and it's so much bigger than the mind. Again, the mind can help you, but grace is what's going to help you to listen. The mind is going to say, I've got something to say. Who cares what they say? I'm triggered and they've offended me. Grace says, wow, let me take a deep breath. Let me listen to what they're actually saying instead of assuming that they're this way or that way, a bad person or a good person. Grace says, let me open up to this experience. Maybe I'm feeling really activated right now. Let me fall into grace and have an understanding for myself and my own humanity to say, wow, I'm really activated right now. This is really getting under my skin. Or to read their behavior and say, wow, what I'm saying is really bothering them. But we can speak like adults and learn from one another instead of just wishing somebody was off the planet. That's not how we're going to solve something. And calling people names, that is so sad that people would think that. It makes me really sad, but I'm not going to sit here and label an entire group that thinks that they're evil and whatever, because some of these people, I know that they have a good heart, but they're just operating in this robotic way because they're letting their mind dictate everything. And they're forgetting their own humanity. They're forgetting their own grace. So this is an opportunity to ask yourself, like, what would love do? That's grace. What would love do right now? What would love do when I disagree so much that I almost feel like doing the unthinkable? What would love do? Not what would the mind do? What would love do? Not what would the darkness do? Not what would this group think do? But what would love do in this moment? What are you guys saying? My grand started a Democratic Party in my country after the Soviet Union fell. He told me that politics are a waste of time. It destroys you. It's an endless snake pit. It is. I mean, it's so sad. And yet I don't have a better idea of how we can operate, right? Like, we need some kind of system. So I don't know exactly, but it is a snake pit, and it is like really sad that it can turn people into the most evil versions of themselves, right? I don't want to label an entire group, but it can turn people, individuals, into the most evil version of themselves very quickly. It's just really sad. Art is the purest way of freedom if you look at it historically. Yes, I agree. Art is what is going to save us. I mean, art is what brings us together. A song, a painting, a movie. And then you realize, like, oh my gosh, I'm not so alone. Oh my gosh, I understand the heart of that person, right? You don't have to agree with everybody. But if you can fall into grace where you understand the heart of somebody, that is healing. But just calling names and saying, I wish somebody was, DAD, that's not doing it, right? That's really, really scary. And the mind will trick you. The mind will trick you into thinking things that aren't true, because it gets you to not look at the individual. It gets you to go into groupthink. I mean, I was talking to this lady about the white privilege thing, right? And she was like, well, Leah, she's like, I know. And of course, I have to say, just for the sake of the story, because I know you don't really ever have to say what somebody looks like unless it pertains exactly to the story. That's another thing that's always so funny. It's like, it doesn't even matter. Why even mention somebody's skin color? But this particular incident, I think you'll get that it does pertain to the story. So this lady's a black lady, and she was like, Leah, I know that you're not racist. I've worked with you for a long time, but you have to understand that racism is real. And I said, I totally do understand that. And that's horrible. That's awful. And I don't agree with that at all. And she was like, well, I know, and I know your heart, and I know you don't. But she said, you have to understand why some people say that there's white privilege and everything. And I said, well, yeah, explain to me mine in modern day right now, my white privilege, because she knew the hard times that I was going through financially and otherwise. And she said, well, for instance, today, if you walked into a restaurant you would be served higher priority over Oprah Winfrey. Huh? Where would that happen? Even people who don't like Oprah would serve Oprah over me. Give me a break. That is absurd. I told her that. I said that is absurd. That is some absurd groupthink. Or I'm going to the wrong restaurant. I mean, maybe if you walked into some seriously racist restaurant, then they would give me priority over Oprah. But any place else in the whole world would give her priority over me. And it's not based on our skin, right? I mean, that to me, that is such groupthink. I'm like, that is just absolutely not true. That is just not true. So I don't know. You tell me, do you agree? Do you think that I would be served higher priority over Oprah? I highly doubt that. Why is America so obsessed with labels? I don't know. Maybe because there's a lot of darkness. Maybe because they're trying to stir up divisiveness. I mean, I think a lot of these labels are the thing that has stirred up divisiveness. Like I said, I went to school in a gang-ridden school when I was in public school, like before I went to middle school and in high school. I was friends with everybody. I mean, so many different groups. That's been half my problem, is that I've never adhered to one group. Like, okay, here's this one group. I'd be like, oh, cool, I like this group for that reason, that group for this reason. I was even hanging out with some gang members. You know, I was like, okay, cool. One time I was in a stolen car on accident. I was like, what? Why does that car have such a small steering wheel? He's like, oh, I stole this. I was like, hey, what? I mean, I didn't want to participate in that. But my point is that we were all getting along. There was nothing like that. But nowadays, the divisiveness have gotten so big. It's like, no, if you're this way, it has to be that way. And I'm like, that's never been my experience. I know that it exists, but I think calling labels on each person and like, you're this and you're that and this and that creates divisiveness. Of course, my battery is about to die now. No way Oprah would also have a huge security detail. Yes, and encouraging a following around her. Yes, hello. Oh my gosh. I mean, it is just absolutely asinine. So it's just gotten a little crazy. And I really do pray for the people that were hurt this past weekend, the people who died this past weekend, their families. I pray for Donald Trump. I mean, this is horrible that we're in a place where people would be praying for him to be offed. That's scary, you guys. Nobody should want that. Nobody should want. That is a scary place to be, to think that there's people here in the United States, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, but to go into that vibration of wanting a former president to be assassinated is not healthy thinking. So check in if you're thinking that way. Fall into grace. Imagine that this is your brother, sister, friend, and fall into that understanding again of your own humanity and care and concern for people. My battery is going to die. All these comments are probably going to disappear again because that's what keeps happening on YouTube. I don't know what is going on. I have the comments turned on and then they disappear once the live stream updates. But I do appreciate you all being here. I hope that this helps in some way. I really invite you to fall into grace today. So when you are challenged, remember the darkness, demons, whatever you want to call it, that low vibrations shizzle that makes you want to go and do something terrible or condone some terrible thing, no matter what side of the argument you're on, that is an opportunity to fall into grace and to remember that you're bigger than that. You're bigger than that. And that divisiveness and that hatred is not going to help anybody's agenda. I don't care what you stand for. That divisiveness is going to hurt everybody. Everybody. So I really invite you to have grace for yourself, by listening to yourself, by listening to the own thoughts and negative stuff that comes up in your own head, your negative thoughts about other people, and find grace for yourself and other people through the simple act of listening and checking in with your own behavior and the behavior of others. Nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. None of us are perfect. Grace is an opportunity to allow yourself to be perfectly imperfect and not embrace the darkness that is being fed to us from all angles to hate one another. I love you so much. I really do. I appreciate you being here. And even if we disagree, I send you so much love. We have a right to disagree. Let's disagree in a loving way. That's grace. That is what listening can do. That's what love would do. And I'll see you next time. Bye.